Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Hope so you all are good, fine and healthy. Well, student, in this section we are going to discuss about the spinal cord. Like in previous section we have discussed about the brain. So let's start. Basically, if we are going to discuss about the spinal cord, then spinal cord is basically the tubular bundle of the nerves. It means that the spinal cord is made up of the bundles of the nerve and arises from the brain stem. If you remember, we have discussed about the medulla oblongata, that the brain, basically the spinal cord, arises from the brain stem of the brain medulla oblongata, that is a part of the hinge brain, and used to extend to the lower back. Basically, the spinal cord is also protected by the bony part, and this bony is known as the vertebral column, just like the cranium was protecting the brain. Moreover, the spinal cord, just like the brain, is also protected by the three layers, and these three layers are basically known as the meninges. These meninges are not only protecting but also nourishing and providing the oxygen to the spinal cord as well. Moreover, these meninges are filled by the cerebrospinal fluid, which we have learned in the brain, that is basically also used to travel in the you can say ventricles of the brain, as well as to the meninges of the spinal cord. This basically the central canal of the spinal cord is protected by this butterfly-like structure, and this is known as a gray matter. And this gray matter, you know very well, is made up of those axons which are non-myelinated. Similarly, if you are going to see, then the white matter used to surround around that gray matter, and the white matter means that it contains such kind of the axons or the subbodies which do not contain the myelinated, so which contains the myelinated sheet, and the gray matter, the axons which do not contain the myelinated sheet. The gray matter also contains the, you can say that, neuron cell body. The gray matter is also containing the neuron cell body. Moreover, the 31 nerves used to arise from the spinal cord. The 31 nerves used to arise from the spinal cord, and one more thing is that these all 31 nerves are basically the mixed nerve. And you have already learned about the definition of the mixed nerve, that contains the axons of the sensory and the motor, both neuron. So the 31 nerves used to arise from the spinal cord, and these all nerves are basically the mixed nerves. One more thing which is very important to know, that each nerve which is arising from the spinal cord have basically two roots. The one is known as the dorsal root and other one is known as the ventral. Basically, we are going to discuss that I told you before that 31 nerves used to arise from the spinal cord, and each nerve is the mixed nerve, and each nerve which is arising from the spinal cord have basically two roots. The one is the dorsal root and other one is the ventral root. The dorsal root and the ventral root. The dorsal root contains, basically is made up of sensory axons and the ganglion. Ganglions are, as I told you before, that they're helping nerve cells as well as the cell bodies. So the dorsal root is basically made up of the sensory axons, ganglion, and the cell bodies. The ventral root is basically made up of the axons of the motor neuron. So it means that the dorsal roots are basically made up of the sensory neurons, and whereas the ventral is basically made up of the motor neurons. So each mixed nerve will have the two roots. The one is the dorsal root and the other one is the ventral root, and this is the nerve. So this is another nerve. If you see, then 31 nerves are basically arising, and each nerve have two roots. Each nerve have two roots. One is the dorsal and other one is the ventricle. Moreover, the greatest advantage of basically the spinal cord is that the spinal cord is basically creating a link between the body parts and the brain. The spinal cord usually carries the message from the brain from you can say from brain to all part of the body and from all part to the brain. Spinal cord used to transmit the nerve impulse from the body part to brain and from brain to body part, as well as one more important function which is played by the spinal cord is the reflex action. The spinal cord is basically acting as the coordinator which used to help in the reflex action, which we are going to learn in the next session inshallah. That word is basically the reflex the brain and the spinal cord is the basic central nervous system part. Basically, if we are going to discuss about the spinal cord, then it is the bundle of the nerves which is extending from the medulla oblongata of the hindbrain and used to extend toward the lower back. Its internal structure is that is covered by the three meninges, and these meninges are in fact filled with the cerebrospinal fluid. These meninges are only not only protecting but nourishing the spinal cord as well, just like in the brain. You know very well about the spinal fluid. Basically, if we are going to discuss internal structure, then the central canal contains the butterfly structure called gray matter, and gray matter is covered by the white matter. You know very well about the composition of the gray and the white matter. The gray as well as the spinal cord is protected with the vertebral column. One unit is known as a vertebrae. This is basically protecting the spinal cord, just like the cranium in the bone. Cranium is protecting the brain. So why these both parts are actually protected? The reason is that they are very, very, very fragile and they are made up of nerves or the neuron cell. If any cell is going to get damaged, then it will never heal again. So that's why they are protected very much in the safety, like with the bones. If any nerve is going to get damaged, obviously it is not going to heal. Hope so students you get the lecture. If you have any query, you can comment me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.